Free at last. Free at last. Good God Almighty, we're free at last. Are we really? We're going to get to that later tonight. But before that, my name is Matt Anderson, and I'm the new Executive Director of MCCJ. Thank you. Although I'm new to this role, I'm not new to MCCJ. MCCJ is an organization that I truly love, and as the immediate past board member, I feel a real sense of responsibility to make sure that MCCJ is in our community for another 86 years. I come from the business world, the world of finance, and in our world, we often talk about perception versus reality. Our reality and the truth is that MCCJ has been doing work in this community for a very, very long time. And we've been acting as a convener in the most important of ways. But over the last 3 years, our perception, our community's perception, really isn't our reality. And MCCJ has lost our voice. And I'm here to tell you that I'm here to bring MCCJ's voice back. I'm here to make sure that our strategic partners in the community have the support that they need, and that they know that our doors are open to collaborate. And I'm ultra, hyper dedicated to making sure that by the time I leave my seat one day as executive director, that alongside our stakeholders, our community leaders, and our elected officials, that our people of Miami will walk with their heads high and with dignity, knowing that they do not have to worry about being hated. You know, our organization goes back a long time in Miami. We've been here almost 90 years. And we started off as part of a national organization, the National Conference of Christians and Jews. And that organization goes back to the 1920s. And it came together basically when organizations such as the Ku Klux Klan were coming to prominence. And lots of hate dialogue was coming about. And a group of Christians and Jews came together and said, this can't be, and we need to find a way to stop this. And out of that, in 1928, our clergy dialogue was born. And our Miami chapter is a founding member of this clergy dialogue. And fast forward to today, our clergy dialogue is a member of clergy leaders, imams, rabbis, priests, coming together and talking about building bridges and finding ways to put that into action through their work in the community together. And our organization just doesn't embrace Christians, Jews, and Muslims. We embrace everyone. So at MCCJ, our mission is really simple. We embrace diversity, and we build an inclusive Miami through our programming. And today, it means a lot to really launch our Can We Talk series. And our Can We Talk series is a series of talks in which we have frank conversations that are raw during times that need frank and raw attention. So, tonight, we're going to talk about bulldozing barriers, and we're going to reflect on Juneteenth and diversity in Miami. It's funny. Tonight, on the eve of Juneteenth, it's really appropriate for us to have this conversation, especially after just last night, President Biden historically signed legislation into action establishing Juneteenth as a National Independence Day. With that, all of us have a lot of responsibility. Many people have the misconception that Juneteenth marked the end of slavery. It really didn't. What it did mark was that it was the end of slavery. It marked the end of slavery in the last state, which was Texas, to make slavery illegal. And slavery is actually made illegal 6 months later due to the 13th Amendment. However, Juneteenth offers up us a message of hope. On June 19, 1865, people in the country came together and in their mind knew that they were so close yet so far to independence. And they had in their mind that hope of freedom was coming. And eventually it did. So for us, at least in my mind, Juneteenth represents hope. Juneteenth is an opportunity for us to educate ourselves. We have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to make sure that Juneteenth doesn't become a Hallmark holiday and just a day off from work. I'm guilty as charged for not have been fluent in Juneteenth. But we all have a responsibility on this day to educate ourselves, to challenge ourselves, and to challenge the education from our past educations, and know that it's okay to say that what we learned might have been not true. And lastly, it's time to put things into action and to stop just having a bunch of conversations. So 2 weeks ago, our community lost a really important leader, Al Dotson Sr. Al Dotson Sr. was an incredible man. He was a trusted advisor to many, a mentor, and a man that was born into a very difficult life of segregation. But that didn't stop him. Al Dotson Sr. grew into being a highly successful businessman, and he's leaving a huge legacy with his children and many people in this room who were his mentees. Last week at his celebration of life, one of his friends told the story of when Mr. Dotson was asked, what is the definition of fellowship? And Mr. Dotson replied that his definition of fellowship was having all his fellows together in one ship. And it's so amazing to have all my fellows on stage with me and in the crowd. So thank you so much for being here. I think in all my 36 years, I think this conversation tonight might be one of the most important conversations I've ever had. And, Marilyn Hollifield is amazing. Everybody here is amazing, but Marilyn is extra special. Marilyn challenged me to think big when we first talked about this event. And I'm just jumping off my seat looking at how it turned out. And I know Marilyn told me not to start with you, but I'm just going to do a quick introduction before we jump in. When Marilyn was 14 years old, she listened to Dr. King give an address from a jail in Birmingham. And in that address, Dr. King talked about how it really wasn't his best use to be sitting idly in Atlanta. He needed to be with the people of Birmingham, where the action was. And out of that came a lot of amazing things, and first through Marilyn. Marilyn is a trailblazer, and when we talk about bulldozing barriers, she boom-boomed everything. She more than bulldozed everything. And that speech by Dr. King inspired Marilyn to be one of 3 people to uncomfortably integrate her school in Tallahassee. She went on to make a mark during her time at Swarthmore College. Then went on to Harvard Law School and did a huge first. She went on to become not just the first black woman, but the first woman partner of a big law firm in the state of Florida, which is huge. So I dedicate this talk to Maryland and the legacy of Al Dotson Sr. So to set the tone for tonight, I want Brother Chris Norwood to please give us some idea of where we're sitting right now. This is a really historical site that's very appropriate for the day for Juneteenth, and then we'll move into the talk.
Thank you very much. Greetings. My name is Christopher Norwood. Wave your hands to me. Wave your hands. Say hello. You know, we all good people here. I want to thank Khadisha Phelps for introducing Matt to me to coordinate this event. This building is a holy place. This building is a holy place because this building was built as a safe haven. It is a rooming house. It was built in the early 1900s to house mostly Bahamians that were gathering in Miami to build the railroads that are right down the street. It was built by a man by the name of Shadrach Ward, who was...
It was Muhammad Ali. And meeting him at a point when I was about 4 or 5 years old, Ali, and I know that Dr. Adams and others know this, at a later point in his Miami journey, actually came back to Miami, he was training for a fight in the Bahamas right around 1980-81, and meeting him, I'd never met a Muslim American, a black man like that, who truly was larger than life. I went home and told my parents about the experience, and I wanted to grow up becoming a boxer, which didn't happen. But from that point, it was a learning journey for me about Muhammad Ali's journey, and from 1960, the urban mythology of him taking his gold medal and throwing it into the river after winning the 1960 Olympics, but his journey as a black man, which is not my journey as a brown man, but as a Muslim American and somebody who really shattered the imagination of what was possible, showed me the power of community, showed me the power of why modeling the behavior for others matters so much, engaging in spaces, trying to enter into and appreciate the lived experiences of others in the communities that we're building. I mean, we're sitting here in this space, not just here at the historic Ward Rooming House, but in Miami, and how many of us reflect on the fact that Florida was actually home to more lynchings per capita than any other state in the Union. And right here in Dade County, 25 miles south of where we were, 3 black men in 1920 and 1921, J.B. Harris, Roy Gaines, and William Simmons, were all lynched. There isn't a memorial, there isn't a marker, there's no living memory for the fact that that's also our Miami, right? So this beautiful city that's really a confluence of those who survived the pogroms of Europe, the horrors of the Holocaust, the doughboys of Europe, the ghosts of Jim Crow, the horrors of Castro's Cuba and throughout Latin America. Really, those were our teachers, those were our educators. And so for me, being a product of that is the reason why I go back to what I learned when I had the privilege when I was 4 years old to meet Muhammad Ali, and how, you know, when he said he shook the world, he shook me up around the responsibility that we all have to engage, connect, and reaffirm the human dignity of others. So for me, that's the reason why it's important. I begin every single day with a prayer with the hope that that same impact that Ali had on my life when I was at the starting point of my Miami journey, that I can, in some small way, be a ripple of that energy in the journey of people that might be at the starting point of their Miami journey. And so that's the reason why connection, community, fellowship, reaffirming the human dignity of others, that's what is my magnetic true north.
My dear Catherine. So, besides having an early amount of tremendous success in business and going from the tech world to thinking outside the box and leveraging you and your husband Dan's passion for art, you took a real grassroots approach to starting the Fountainhead residency. And I've seen the magic that happens there time and time again. And you have inspired so many and changed the trajectory of so many artists' lives by giving them an opportunity and now a legacy. And with that said, knowing that having the ability to be self-sufficient is critical to sustainability, how do we increase entrepreneurship, accountability, and self-sufficiency on a grassroots level?
Hello. So how do we ensure in entrepreneurship on a grassroots level?
So based on what you've done, how can you inspire others, especially that are less privileged, to do what you've done but in other areas?
Well, I think for me, and I just loved learning your story, which I didn't know before, and I hope you don't mind, Marilyn, but I do want to say happy birthday.
Happy birthday!
It was your birthday yesterday. But I did, just before I start talking, I did want to say that, I'm sorry. But I don't know, I mean, for me, it's all about, everything in my life has always been about connection, people that I've met, nurturing those relationships, learning from the people, being open, not knowing that I don't know many things. And I think that is probably the most important thing that we can teach our children, that we can share with people around us, is that it is to be a sponge in with everyone that you speak to. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone that you have a conversation with can teach you something about yourself, about the world around you, about what you're able to accomplish. Like, you can be inspired by everyone. So when it comes to doing something different and becoming an entrepreneur, it's about reaching out to people around you. It's about having conviction within yourself and choosing to do something that you're truly passionate about, right? Like, there's nothing you can't do if it is something that you truly believe in. So I believe that mentorship is the key to that. And that literally anybody can be a mentor, but hopefully we have teachers that are mentors, we have parents that are mentors to their children, we have neighbors that are mentors. So I think being an entrepreneur and creating a dream is all about the energy and the people that you surround yourself with. And I know that sounds very, very simple and maybe naive, but I don't think you can ever see that. It's very difficult to see the next rung in your life without somebody that shows you that you're capable and believes in you to get to that next rung. You need somebody that believes in you. And it needs to come, and again, when it comes to being an entrepreneur, it has to be something that is just so deep in you that you can't not do it, right? And then, pulling people in that help to water and nurture that seed and are there to support you as you grow and to pick you up when you fall, because you don't do anything great without falling. That's the other thing. Like, we need to teach our kids that you can fall. Like, actually you should fall, because if you don't, then you're not taking enough risks. But it starts with our kids, and it starts within our communities. Like, it goes back to everything that Saeed said, that community and connection and human beings we are what changes the world together. It's not technology. That enables it, that supports it, right? But it's everyone here on the stage and everyone here in this audience that makes a difference. And it's also about, like, what you put out there and how open you are to those around you. So it's not only absorbing what you can learn from them, but constantly giving back to those around you and inspiring others. So I don't know if that answers your question. We weren't given the questions beforehand, so but I'm very passionate about this, so that's why I was like, go roll with it. So I hope that answers.
Thank you. Matt. So, Mr. Matt, you come from an environment with really strong family values, and you've been afforded the opportunity to go to some of the best schools in the country and gotten the best training possible, which took you on a trajectory to have an amazing career, starting with the Miami Foundation.
Lower levels of an organization. The organization that is homogenous at the top, at the middle, and at the bottom is not bringing its A game to the table. So what can you do about that? Just call it out, be diplomatic. If you're working on a project, you can invite someone, hopefully the organization has at least one brown or black person in it. You can invite someone to be on that team, to invite someone to be on that project. Make friends with others.
But that being said, around Juneteenth, I think that it presents an opportunity for each one of us to ask, where are we on our own anti-racist journey? How are we better understanding the lived experiences of others? How are we interrogating our own bias? How are we orienting ourselves to history and perspective? Also asking ourselves things like checking who's in our circle, right? That this idea that we land at times with these very monochromatic solutions to multi-dimensional challenges, which require us to actually engage with a broader spectrum of people than the default of who's always in the room. So for me, when I think about Juneteenth, it's asking those questions around who's around us, but also more importantly, have we taken the time to actually engage with both history, lived experiences? Several of my friends and panelists up here talked about connecting and engaging with history of today. A couple right before the pandemic, I had an opportunity to lead for our FIU when Dr. Rosenberg, our president, announced that we were going to be playing in the Camellia Bowl in Montgomery, which is a really cool deal for our FIU. The president said, I want to make it a learning journey for our students to actually connect with the experiences of civil rights monuments and experiences in the Montgomery area. So we got a chance to spend time at Brian Stevenson's Equal Justice Initiative, his memorial to peace and justice, to really go deeper into the Rosa Parks Museum. And so what I would say when I think about Juneteenth is asking, where are we at in our own anti-racist journey? Are we picking up books like racism, the origins of modern anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, homophobia, xenophobia, all of these different things that wind up chopping up and dividing us, and asking how is it that we actually get to the root causes of hatred and not just assume that they exist on the dusty shelves of history books, but actually live and walk amongst us today, and that unless we are being willing to be bold and courageous, those voices will be the cacophony that silences those of us who think that we are merely just good souls. And the truth is, we will go darkly into the night unless we're willing to create and constantly curate those difficult, uncomfortable spaces that check our own bias. So that's what I think when I reflect on Juneteenth. And most of us have to appreciate that we're all on day one of our understanding of how far we can actually go, whether it's Juneteenth, whether it's Yom HaShoah, whether it's Ramadan, whether it's Stonewall Memorial. That when we're thinking about all of these types of things, that we have a responsibility to go way deeper beyond sort of Instagram post worthy signaling, and actually go to the humanity of where people's suffering and pain lives, and try to feel with them, and more importantly, learn and evolve with folks.
I hope this is recorded because every time everyone speaks on this panel, I want to absorb everything and repeat and share everything that you're saying. So, for me, Juneteenth is a start. I mean, it's a huge. I shouldn't say it's a start. It is an enormous signaling of the importance of Juneteenth. But for me, I think it's my job. It's all of our jobs to the future of this country and the future of the world. It's all of us working together and constantly learning and constantly checking ourselves and having those difficult conversations. And that's like, I think I'm sitting up here thinking about how do we actually take what we're all talking about, because we're somewhat, talking to people that all probably think the same way we do, right? And how do we get outside of this incredible group of people to actually make a difference, right? Like, so what are the next steps? And Marilyn, you talked about a lot of them, but I mean, what are the things that we can do? I think a lot about the difference that it makes of simply smiling at one another and embracing one another and respecting one another and touching one another. And when someone talks with you, to actually look them in the eyes and hear what they have to say and listen. And so I'm hearing what everyone says, and I'm learning, and I hope that Juneteenth and it being a holiday is so important. But the most important thing we can do is what we do every day. But I hope that it opens people's eyes to things that maybe they thought they could push under the rug in the past, and now they're seeing that they can't. Like, this is important. This is imperative. I don't know. This is I can't think of a strong enough word, but we need to continue having these conversations. We need to recognize our history. We need to we need to understand that was our past, but we need to be, our job, everybody here today, is about the future and what can we do to change it. So we don't have holidays like this in the future. We don't want I don't want my kids having to create new holidays for what our ancestors, the mistakes our ancestors made. I don't want to make those mistakes.
I'm excited about Juneteenth this year. I was, blessed to grow up in a household where my family made sure that we understood and knew true Black history. So I was familiar with Juneteenth. But I'm also not fooled by Juneteenth becoming a national holiday. And that is not the case. Now, where it is a benefit is it is now an annual check-in for this period of time. Because cut back a year ago, all of our inboxes were flooded, right, with all of these statements from all these national organizations and companies saying how they were going to change how they treated Black folk, how Black folk were going to be now lifted up to positions of influence and management and leadership, and they made a lot of promises. And you see this year how much quieter it's gotten during this time, which means a lot of folks have made those promises. They got the brand recognition and media coverage that they needed from those moments, and then they've moved on. What I believe we can use
all throughout our country and certainly here in our community like today. I think we're going to get there. It's going to take some time, but I think what's going to be most important is to remember that we're all interconnected. We are truly all interconnected, and it's important to reach out and to, as Marilyn said, invite folks to the table. and to engage in activities, cultural activities, social activities, community activities that we may not ever really think, why? But I'm going to go to what? I've never heard of Fountainhead residency, for example, or others. And so I think that in order to continue to make that positive change that I deeply believe we all really want, because I believe that we're all inherently good people and we all want good things. I just think we have to keep, it's important to acknowledge, for as hard as it may be, what has led us to where we are. But I'm encouraged, truly encouraged by where we're going. So, thank you.
Well, I am so happy that we now have a national holiday acknowledging what we already know, that there was a crime in this United States and that the federal government is now acknowledging it. And I think that's important. I went to a college where history was not an elective. It was required that you took history. I went to a historically black college. On our campus is a big tree. There's actually an interpretation of that tree inside. It's called the Emancipation Oak. It was the tree under which the first reading of the Emancipation Proclamation was made in the South. This holiday means a lot to me because my family is from Virginia, born and raised Virginia and North Carolina. And Juneteenth is a celebration of liberty. So often when we talk about the Middle Passage and things of that nature, we don't talk about it in the nomenclature of liberty. We don't use liberty when we talk about, we say we want justice, we want freedom, we want those things. But in the American lexicon, liberty means something different. And it's not identified with African Americans, I don't believe. It is liberty that we seek. It's liberty that was won. It was liberty that we have. Yes, there are other things that need to be overcome, but there were certain people that were in shackles. And that liberty from those shackles matter. It's an acknowledgement called Juneteenth. And it's very important also is that this holiday is not celebrating the Emancipation Proclamation. It's celebrating when everybody got the word. So it's celebrating that we are all not free until everybody is free, at least in a symbolic way. And so just think about that. There were black folks still in slavery in Texas years after the Emancipation Proclamation was made. And so it wasn't until those troops came into Galveston that you now, through war, it's also acknowledgement that war brought that. And it's an announcement of our history. So often we hear, things that are just not true. And it's just to me, it's a national holiday. It's acknowledging something. It's a stain on our history. And when we acknowledge it, we can then move on. And so often we don't. Everyone here probably does. But now you can't argue with people. You could argue, there's a national holiday. So whatever you want to say, whoever doesn't believe in this, whoever doesn't want to believe in history, well, the United States Senate passed it unanimously. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's not just symbolic to me, it's a national holiday. We're acknowledging history. July 4th is not just a holiday, it is an acknowledgement of a historic moment. Most of our holidays are acknowledgement of a historic moment. We don't argue about, the Independence Day. Whoever would or debates that history, I don't know, we would look at them like they were crazy. But there are people out here that look at the history of the United States in certain communities, and there's two sides to it. I don't see two sides. It's historical fact, and it's not. And let's move on. And we do not move on from this. And I think this is, to me, an opportunity to just lay some things to bed. Like it happened, they were liberated, and now we can actually, we still got many more mountains to cross, rivers to cross, no question about it. When I look inside my gallery and I see the Emancipation Proclamation, the Emancipation Oak, and it's juxtaposed against a portrait of Abraham Lincoln by Charles White, and he's looking at that. That is a vision when he signed that all black folk would be free. and it actually happened, and we're celebrating a stain. Yes, it's something that we hope we would never have to celebrate. But sometimes you have to, denying things, acknowledging them, we can then move on. And that's what it represents to me. So I'm going to celebrate, I'm going to love it. Tomorrow at our opening, we're actually going to celebrate the first municipal, the sponsor of the first municipal Juneteenth legal holiday, and I'm going to say one last thing because I think it's important to this audience. And I'm sorry. Last year, I was driving around the community in North Miami Beach on election day. I was working with some folk, organizing some people, doing some political work. I ran up on a Confederate flag hanging high in North Miami Beach. In North Miami Beach, high up, with some people's campaign literature signs in front of his house, and I'm not even going to say who they were. And I told some friends of mine, and they couldn't believe me. And now in North Miami Beach, before this holiday even happened, every worker in Miami Beach has a day off, and that person who put that flag on up there, he is not going to be able to call City Hall on that day, and I feel good about that.
Thank you so much. And Chris, you give me a great segue to what I've been thinking. I agree with everyone. This is a wonderful holiday. It's a wonderful moment to reflect and to check in. But one of the reflections that is on my mind is that more than 40 of the 50 states in our union have passed more than 400 laws to restrict the right to vote. Now, I'm a child of the 60s, and in my community of Tallahassee, one of the brightest, most handsome young black men that was a Florida A&M University student went off to Mississippi to help people register to vote, and he was found in a car in a swamp, overturned dead. He was an inspiration also to me for many of the things because he gave his life so we could vote. Today, on the national holiday of Juneteenth, the rights, my right to vote, and the right to vote in 40 of the 50 states is being restricted. So I take Juneteenth as a day to check in, as a day for us to reflect, to see what we're doing. But I also have this thought that what can each of us do? What can we inspire others to do to protect the right to vote? The right to vote for Black people has been something of a long journey, a brutal journey, and many people died for that, to wit the young man in my community. And the cause of his death, under suspicious circumstances, has never been conclusively determined, but his death lingers on in my mind. But it also shows me how important it is for us to take these moments and know that our sacred right to vote in this democracy is being challenged in more than 40 states by more than 400 laws to restrict access to the ballot, to change how you even count votes. So